She came back from the conference glowing. I'll never forget the way she walked into our kitchen that Sunday night. Mara was humming under her breath, still in her gray skirt suit, her heels clicking against the hardwood. Her face lit up like she'd just closed the deal of the century, or maybe like a teenager sneaking in after the best weekend of her life. "Dean," she said, dropping her purse on the counter and reaching for a glass of water. "You're still up? You didn't have to wait." Her smile was bright, too bright, and for a second, I almost believed her. Almost. The truth was, I'd been waiting for days. My coffee had gone cold hours earlier, my mind running through every excuse she'd given me in the last 3 months. Late meetings, client dinners, weekend conferences, all with no paperwork, no handouts, no receipts. Just stories, half-polished and rehearsed, meant to reassure a husband she thought was too trusting to ask questions. But I had questions, and I already had most of the answers. "Conference must have been something," I said, keeping my voice steady. It was exhausting. She let out a fake little sigh, tossing her blazer over the chair. "But productive. I think this one will really open doors for me." She poured her water, avoiding my eyes. And that was her first mistake. Mara always made eye contact when she lied. Always. I let the silence drag, the only sound the ticking of the kitchen clock and her nervous sip of water. Then I slid the envelope across the counter. White. Sealed. My name in block letters across the front. "What's this?" she asked. "Something I picked up Friday afternoon." She frowned, turning it over in her hands. "Dean, I just got home. Can't this wait?" "No," I said, sharper this time. "Open it." Her eyes flicked up, cautious now. She tore the flap and pulled out the folded papers inside. Her fingers trembled before she'd even finished the first line. It wasn't a hotel bill. It wasn't a receipt from some restaurant she swore she'd never been to. It was lab results. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her glowing smile vanished, replaced by something I hadn't seen in years, raw fear. "Mara," I said quietly, "care to explain how my wife went away on a business trip and came back with test results like these?" She didn't answer. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I leaned forward on the counter, the papers between us like a loaded gun. "Because I've been patient. I've been silent. I've let you sell me your little stories about late nights and important clients. But this," I tapped the results with my finger, "this isn't just lying. This is proof." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. "Not this time." She whispered, "Dean, it's not what you think." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's exactly what you said last month when your phone pinged downtown while you swore you were in Boston. It's what you said when Antonio's restaurant charged our joint account, even though you told me you were on a diet. And now, after all that, you want to tell me these lab results aren't what I think?" Her tears spilled over. She reached for my hand. I pulled it back. "Don't," I said flatly. The silence stretched again, heavier this time. And then, in a voice so small I almost missed it, she asked, "Where did you get them?" I stared at her, the woman I thought I knew, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "That," I said, standing up from the stool, "is the wrong question. The real question is, what else am I going to find?" She blinked at me, her mouth opening to form another excuse. But I didn't wait. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her clutching the papers with shaking hands. Because what she didn't know was, I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. Mara cried in the bedroom, her muffled sobs seeping through the walls like water through a crack, but I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, staring at the lab results again and again. Every line, every number, was a nail in the coffin of the life I thought we had. By morning, I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a detective. See, men like me, construction guys, aren't supposed to be clever. We're supposed to swing hammers, come home tired, and nod along when our wives talk about client dinners and networking opportunities. That's what Mara counted on. She thought I was too simple, too trusting. She forgot that a man who spends years building houses learns how to read foundations. And hers was crumbling. The first stop was her laptop. She guarded it like a dragon hoards gold, but when she showered, she left it charging in the kitchen. The password was easy, our wedding date. Fitting, considering how little that date seemed to mean to her now. Emails. Hundreds of them. At first, they looked professional, subject lines about strategy sessions and conference prep. But the deeper I dug, the more the tone shifted. The names got shorter. Formality dropped away. Then came one name that made my stomach tighten. Ryan. Ryan Ditt. Mid-30s, same company as Mara. I remembered him from the Christmas party. Slick hair, perfect smile, shaking my hand like he was doing me a favor. I'd brushed him off back then. Now his name was everywhere. Dozens of late-night messages, each one a little more personal. You looked amazing tonight. Wish this conference would never end. Can't wait to see you again. And then, the kicker, an email with hotel confirmations. Not one, not two, 6. Each booked under his name, with Mara listed as the guest. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. When I confronted Mara the night before, she asked the wrong question. Where did you get the lab results? Not why did you look? Not what do you think this means? No. She wanted to know who'd slipped up. And that told me everything. I closed the laptop and sat there in silence, the pieces fitting together faster than I wanted them to. She hadn't just been unfaithful, she'd been careful. Planning, organizing, using business trips as camouflage while she snuck off to hotel rooms bought with our money. But she hadn't counted on me talking to Dr. Ellis. I'd gone for a routine checkup 2 weeks earlier, nothing special. Dr. Ellis had been my physician since I was 25. Salt and pepper hair, the kind of man who always remembered your kids' names. He'd call me Friday, voice low, asking me to stop by. Something about irregularities in Mara's records. That's when he handed me the lab envelope. Dean, he said, lowering his glasses. I'm not at liberty to discuss her private medical details. But I'll say this, you should have this conversation with her. Sooner rather than later. And that was all I needed. The truth was written in those test results. And Mara's glowing return from her so-called conference told me she had no idea I already knew. By the time she padded into the kitchen Monday morning, red-eyed and pale, I was already dressed for work. Dean, please, she whispered. We can talk about this. I picked up my thermos, steadying my voice. No, we'll talk when I'm ready. Until then, I want you to think about one question. She swallowed hard. What question? How many times? Her lips parted, confusion flickering, but I didn't explain. I walked out the door, leaving her standing barefoot on the tile, clutching her coffee like it might save her. And as the door closed behind me, one thought burned hotter than the rest. She thought she could keep playing me. She thought wrong. By Tuesday, the anger had cooled into something sharper. I wasn't going to scream, or throw things, or beg Mara for honesty. That part of me was dead now. What was left was the part that measured twice and cut once. And Ryan Ditt was the piece that needed cutting. I drove past his office at noon. Silver BMW parked in the same spot near the entrance, polished to a shine. I sat across the street in my truck, sipping burnt diner coffee, watching him laugh with a coworker as they walked back from lunch. He had that swagger of a man who thought the world owed him respect. I'd seen it before in foremen who never lifted a hammer but barked orders like they built the skyscraper themselves. I took a picture of him in the car. Not because I needed proof, but because I wanted to remember this moment, the calm before he realized his life was about to change. That evening, I made a call. Not to Mara, not to Ryan, to Nate Williams, my foreman and the closest thing I had to a brother. He'd been with me since the early days of Morrison Construction, when jobs were small and paychecks were smaller. Nate was the kind of man who asked no questions until the work was done. You busy tonight? I asked. Depends. You buying the beer? I'll buy the beer, but I need you to bring something else, Tommy's number. Nate was quiet for a second. Then, Tommy Breslin? The repo guy? That's the one. Dean, what exactly are you planning? Nothing illegal. Just a little misplacement. Nate chuckled, but it was the kind of laugh that carried a warning. Fine, but if this blows back on us, I'm saying you talked me into it. That night, we met in the back booth at Callahan's bar. The place smelled like fried wings and stale Budweiser. It was the kind of joint where gossip floated faster than smoke, and I wanted people to see us there together. Let Mara hear about it through the grapevine. Let Ryan wonder why I was laughing with Nate in public while his phone buzzed in private. Over cold beer, I laid it out. Ryan's car. Mara's Audi. Both shiny symbols of the life they thought they were building. Both ripe for disappearing acts. Tommy can handle it, Nate said, tapping his bottle against mine. Guy's made half his living off idiots who don't read fine print. He'll stash them for a week, tops. Long enough to make a point. Exactly what I wanted. Not destruction, yet. Just a reminder that things you think are safe can vanish overnight. As I drove home, headlights cutting through the dark, I rehearsed what I'd say when Mara called, panicked about her missing Audi. I'd play dumb. I'd let her twist. And I'd enjoy every second. Because this wasn't about a car. It wasn't even about an affair. It was about control. For months, Mara thought she was in charge, sneaking around while I worked overtime, cooking up excuses about conferences and client dinners. She believed she was untouchable. But now, she was about to learn what it felt like to lose something important. And Ryan? He was next. By noon Wednesday, both cars were gone. Tommy worked faster than I expected. Mara's Audi vanished from the motel parking lot on Route 3, and Ryan's BMW was plucked straight out of his office lot like a rabbit from a magician's hat. Neat. Clean. No mess left behind. I knew because I drove past both places myself, just to enjoy the view of two empty parking spaces. The first call came at 12:47 p.m. Dean, where's my car? Mara's voice was tight, almost hysterical. Which car? I asked, keeping my tone light. My Audi. It's not where I parked it. Don't play games with me. Huh, that's weird, I said, taking a slow sip of coffee. You sure you remember where you left it? Of course I remember. I parked it at the Comfort Inn last night, and now it's gone. Maybe someone stole it. You should call the police. There was a long silence, just the sound of her shaky breathing on the line. It wasn't stolen, and we both know it. I don't know anything. I've been at work all morning. Ask Nate, he'll vouch for me. Damn it, Dean. Oh, by the way, I cut in, Ryan called earlier. Something about his car being missing too. Weird coincidence, huh? 10 more seconds of silence. Then she whispered, what do you want? Nothing, I said, smiling even though she couldn't see me. I'm just concerned about all this crime in our quiet little town. Makes a man wonder who he can trust. I hung up before she could answer. By 2 o'clock, my phone buzzed again. This time, a number I didn't recognize. This is Ryan, the text read. We need to talk. I chuckled. Sooner than I expected. I typed back. I'm listening. But not over text. Callahan's. Tonight. 8 p.m. That would give him the whole afternoon to sweat, pacing in his polished shoes, wondering how much I knew and how much I could prove. When I showed Nate the text, he grinned. He's rattled. I like it. He should be, I said. He picked the wrong man's wife to play house with. As evening came, I sat in my truck outside Callahan's, watching the neon sign flicker above the door. The bar was already busy, retirees hunched over drafts, a jukebox humming low. Ryan would hate it here, I thought. Too blue-collar. Too real. That was why I picked it. When my phone buzzed again, on my way, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not anger. Not sadness. Satisfaction. Because this was the part Mara and Ryan never understood. I wasn't a man who raised his voice. I was a man who planned, who built, who waited. And tonight, I was about to start tearing their world apart. The jukebox was humming out some old Eagles tune when Ryan walked in. He didn't belong in a place like Callahan's, and everyone knew it the second the door shut behind him. His suit was pressed, his tie knotted perfectly, his shoes polished enough to see your reflection. He looked like money, and in a blue-collar bar, that made him a target. He scanned the room until he spotted me in the back booth. I didn't move, didn't wave him over, just let him make the walk of shame past men in work boots and women who'd seen his type before. Every set of eyes followed him like he was a fox wandering into a henhouse. Dean, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. His voice was calm, but I saw the sweat at his temples. We need to clear this up. I leaned back, folding my arms. Then start talking. He clasped his hands together, that lawyerly smile plastered on his face. Look, I never meant for things to get so complicated. Mara told me you two were practically separated. That your marriage was. Don't. I cut him off. My voice was quiet, but it carried. Don't sit here in front of me and feed me her lines. You knew she was married. You knew she was lying to me. And you didn't care. Ryan's smile faltered. It wasn't like that. Mara and I. It was exactly like that, I snapped. You saw something you wanted, and you took it. That's who you are. Doesn't matter if it belonged to someone else. His jaw tightened, but he kept his tone smooth. I'm trying to be reasonable. We can resolve this without hostility. Reasonable. I leaned forward, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. You're driving a rental right now because your BMW disappeared. Mara's Audi too. And you think you're the one holding the cards? That got him. For the first time, his composure cracked. His eyes darted, then snapped back to me. You son of a... Careful, I warned, letting a smile creep across my face. This bar's full of men who work for me. You raise your voice, and they'll make sure you regret it. Ryan glanced around, realizing half the room was listening while pretending not to. He swallowed hard. What do you want, Dean? I let the silence stretch before answering. I want you to understand something. My wife may have been willing, but you... I jabbed a finger at him. You made her feel bold enough to lie, to betray, to think she could burn down my house without consequence. So here's the deal. You end it. Tonight. You call her, you tell her it's over, and you never speak to her again. Do that, and maybe I let you walk out of here with just your pride shattered. He stared at me, weighing his options, then slowly pulled his phone from his pocket. His hands were shaking. On speaker, I said. He hesitated, then dialed. Mara's voice came through after 3 rings, frantic and breathless. Ryan? Thank God. Where have you been? My car's gone. Dean's lost his mind. Ryan looked at me. I made a rolling motion with my hand. Mara, he said into the phone, his voice flat. It's over. Silence. Then her voice, shrill. What do you mean it's over? You said you loved me. You said we'd be together. I never said that, Ryan muttered, but his eyes were locked on mine. And just like that, Mara's glowing little fantasy began to collapse. Mara's voice on the other end of the line rose to a pitch that turned every head in the bar. You're breaking up with me? Over the phone. Ryan, after everything? I left my husband for you. I watched Ryan squirm in the booth, face flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. He glanced at me, desperate for some kind of lifeline, but I just leaned back, arms crossed, letting him twist. You left your husband because you wanted to, he said finally, his tone clipped. I never asked you to. This was fun, Mara, but it's not sustainable. Fun. Her voice cracked like glass. You said we were different. You said. He ended the call with a trembling thumb, slamming the phone face down on the table. The entire bar was silent for a heartbeat. Then the jukebox switched tracks, and the spell broke. Conversations resumed, but eyes still lingered on us. Ryan leaned forward, his composure in ruins. Are you happy now? Getting there, I said, my voice calm. You see, Ryan, this wasn't about you breaking it off. It was about me making sure she heard the truth. Not the fairy tale. Not the lies. The truth. He glared at me, jaw working. You're insane. Maybe, I said, finishing my beer and setting the bottle down with a solid clink, but I'm sane enough to know leverage when I see it. And right now, I've got plenty. Ryan's lips pressed into a thin line. He wanted to argue, but he knew I was right. Without Mara, he had nothing to gain from this mess, and a lot to lose. I stood up, sliding out of the booth. You're going to walk out of here, Ryan. You're going to get in your rental, go home to your wife and kids, and pray I don't decide to share what I've learned with her. Or with your boss. Or with the nice folks who keep track of company credit card abuse. His eyes widened. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, I said softly. And I will, if you don't disappear from Mara's life completely. Consider this your one and only warning. I walked out without another word, leaving him to stew in the sour stink of his own panic. Outside, the night air was crisp, sharp in my lungs. For the first time in months, I felt steady, focused. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. A new message. From Mara. We need to talk. Please. Tonight. I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh rising in my throat. She thought she could still negotiate. That I might forgive, forget, or even play the fool again. But Mara hadn't learned yet. She thought Ryan abandoning her was the worst of it. She had no idea what was coming next. Callahan's was still buzzing in my ears when I pulled into the driveway. Mara's car wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. But her shadow was waiting for me inside. I found her at the kitchen table, hair pulled back in a messy bun, eyes swollen from crying. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. The envelope of lab results sat in front of her like a loaded weapon. She must have read them 100 times by now. Dean, she said, her voice hoarse. Please, sit down. I didn't. I leaned against the doorway, arms folded. What is it this time? Another story? Another excuse? She flinched like I'd slapped her. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything. But you have to believe me. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. You didn't mean to sleep with him? You didn't mean to charge hotel rooms to our joint account? You didn't mean to lie about conferences and client dinners? Her lip trembled. I felt invisible, Dean. We stopped talking, stopped touching. I was lonely. Ryan, he made me feel alive again. Alive? I snapped. Mara, you didn't just cheat. You built a second life. And you were sloppy enough to leave a trail. Emails, hotels, and those test results. How many times did you risk dragging me into your mess without telling me? Her eyes widened, panic rising. Dean, please, don't say that. It wasn't like that. You're scaring me. Good, I said, my voice low. You should be scared. For a moment, silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the ticking of the kitchen clock. Then she tried another tactic. She straightened, wiping her eyes, her tone shifting from pleading to icy calculation. The Mara I'd known for the last 2 years, the one who treated marriage like a business contract. You want to end it? Fine, let's divorce. But you and I both know I'm entitled to half. The house, the savings, everything. I smiled, slow and deliberate. You really didn't read the prenup, did you? Her face flickered. Prenups can be challenged. Not when there's video evidence of adultery, I said, stepping closer, my voice a whisper sharp enough to cut. Not when there are receipts and lab reports to back it up. New Hampshire still recognizes fault, Mara. You'll be lucky to walk away with your suitcase. For the first time, her confidence cracked. She looked down at the papers on the table, hands trembling. You wouldn't. I already did, I said, dropping another folder beside the envelope. Inside, copies of the hotel confirmations, emails, and yes, those results. All neatly organized for my lawyer. By this time tomorrow, you'll be served. Her tears returned, this time real. Dean, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I shook my head slowly. The only thing you'll be fixing is where to sleep next week. Her sobs filled the kitchen, raw and desperate, but I felt nothing. No pity, no urge to console. Just a grim satisfaction. Because Mara still thought this was the end. She didn't know it was only the beginning. By Friday morning, everything was in motion. The papers had been filed. The restraining order signed. My lawyer, Steve Morrison, wasn't just efficient. He was thorough. He'd made sure the evidence was lined up like dominoes. The emails, the hotel records, the financial statements, and those lab results Mara had been staring at all week. When the deputy showed up at the house with the envelope, Mara tried to slam the door in his face. He slid it between the frame and her shaking hands anyway. Ma'am, you've been served. I watched from the porch, arms crossed, while she opened it. Her knees buckled halfway through reading, and she sank onto the steps, the papers fluttering in her lap. You can't do this, she whispered, looking up at me like a cornered animal. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I already did. She cried again, but I'd run out of sympathy. 7 years of marriage reduced to crocodile tears and excuses. She wasn't crying because she lost me. She was crying because she lost control. By noon, her Audi was returned to the driveway, sun-cracked leather seats and all. Tommy had done exactly what I asked, kept it just long enough for people to notice it was gone. When the neighbors saw the tow truck drop it off, whispers spread like wildfire. By dinner time, half the town would know what Mara had been up to. Ryan wasn't doing much better. Word reached me through Darla at Callahan's that his firm had suspended him pending an internal investigation. Someone had slipped HR a nice little packet of expense reports and hotel confirmations. His wife, Sarah, had filed for separation. The BMW was back too, but the shame wasn't something a body shop could fix. Mara cornered me that evening, suitcase in hand, eyes red. Dean, please. Don't leave me like this. I'll be ruined. I opened the front door and stepped aside. You did that yourself. She hesitated, waiting for me to soften, but I didn't. Finally, she dragged her suitcase past me, shoulders slumped, and walked down the driveway. She climbed into the Audi and drove off, taillights glowing red against the dark. When they disappeared, I poured myself a bourbon and sat at the kitchen table. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. No lies. No fake conferences. No forced smiles. Just silence. And peace. I thought about the men in the bar, watching Ryan squirm. About Mara's face when she realized the prenup made her empty-handed. About the deputy handing her those papers she swore I'd never have the guts to file. She thought she could break me. She thought she could bury me in lies and walk away with half my life. But I wasn't my father. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I planned. I built. I waited. And when the time came, I tore it all down. Now the house was mine. The accounts were mine. My dignity was intact. As I took a long sip of bourbon, one thought settled deep in my chest. A man's word is his bond. She broke hers, and I made sure she paid the price.